Michael, today, what I want to talk about is where we've gotten to today. There's a bunch of things we've learned. And I always think about, what would I have told the person that I I was when I first started in this industry, in this business? What are some of the things, like some of the insights, the wisdom I would have shared with that person? So let's maybe talk about where we're at today, just to give people some context, and then we can go back to the start. So tell me a little. I mean, obviously, I know about your business, but just for everybody who's watching, who is Michael Murray and what is textbook painting these days?
Yeah, sure. So I guess give the real brief. Started the company in 2006 after graduating from college. When I was in college, ran a painting business for one of the painting franchise kind of companies or whatever. We basically specialize in residential repaints. I would say, you know, middle to upper middle class kind of target customer. We do very little commercial work. We do a ton of kitchen cabinet refinishing. It's actually the biggest part of our business. And yeah, but interior, exterior, we have an employee model, so we don't use any subcontractors for really anything, but especially for, you know, doing the painting work. Um, Generally, it depends a little bit on the time of year. We certainly get a lot of, winter weather, which we've chatted about here in Cleveland. So exterior season's about 6 months. During the busy season, I would say we're between 35 and 40-ish painters. And then, this time of year, it's generally 25-ish on average. Again, give or take. I think anybody in the industry knows that that's not always a exact number depending on the day and the week. Yeah, so this year we're going to do a little over 3 million, about three and a quarter or something like that. Pretty similar actually to what we did last year. We're kind of flat year over year. Um, and yeah, less than what we were hoping for. As we wrapped up, 2023, certainly a learning year for us. Now as we're getting into 2024, certainly some optimism going forward for some renewed growth. We've grown quite a bit over the last, I don't know, whatever, 4 or 5 years leading into 2023. So yeah, I don't know. That kind of helped to.
Yeah, I think so. I think that gives people some context around what we're talking about. And
Cool.
um, yeah, strangely enough, I mean, my story is fairly similar. Although I didn't do a student painting company, um, I just wanted to. I think actually what's funny about my story is I wanted to go start a business I could go bankrupt at by the time I was 20. That was my goal.
It's a good
and,
one. Yeah.
and you know what? The painting business isn't too hard to do that. Um, if I wasn't living at home when I first started, I would have definitely achieved that goal pretty quick. Because I knew nothing. Like I had no support. I had I absolutely nothing. I remember, buying my first power washer and ladder off of a, ex college pro guy, and him saying, good luck, you're never going to make it. I was like, that's the point. That's the point. So thank you. Um, and so, from there, it's been kind of a meandering path. Let's say. I think for a long time, I struggled with the industry itself. I did it for the purpose of learning, and ultimately found it hard to get out. It can be a very nice cash flow business if done right, and I started that in 2006, 2007. I guess officially we started 2008, and it was just seasonal to start with, and then we moved into being full time in 2013. So it's been 10 years that business has been operational full time. And I run that with my, it's a family business. I've got it's a staff model as well, and so this last year we would have been up to, I think total the company was about 65 staff, and yeah, it's fun. The motto for that company is to keep Calgary colorful. That's the city we work in, and it's been a fun journey to see that grow. And so that's really at the end of the day where PaintScout came out of, was that journey and trying to understand how to price and sell, which you know we'll get into this, but that was one of the big things I wish I could have been more exposed to from the start,
Mm-hmm.
and really where I had the most opportunity to go bankrupt was in that pricing model. But
Mm.
in any case, that's my story. So it's been a 15-year journey total, and you know, I wouldn't say every day has been fun, but
Mm.
overall, I think it's a pretty cool industry to be a part of.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I hear you.
Um,
So it's basically, kind of what I hear you asking from the beginning then is like, what do we wish we knew in years like one, two, three, maybe four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, whatever,
mhm.
right? As we were getting going and building something and, kind of going through some of those initial challenges.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll throw it back to you a little bit. I think I, you know, I've heard you say this before. Like you kind of wish at this, at, knowing what you know today, going back to the start. I think you had said like you'd really like to know what a good company is, and then what a great company looks like.
Mhm.
Maybe you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, part of the challenge for me, I would say like really until I got involved with Nolan Consulting in 2018-ish, that time period roughly. I really didn't know like what anything really was going on in the painting industry. I would say until that point, I even would say I had some like I don't want to use the word shame, but almost like shame over like I'm just a painter or like I just own a painting company,
Mhm.
and that is less significant and less what less than most other things, and that's just the industry and it's okay kind of a thing. And then I got involved with Nolan and the Summit Group and realized like wait a minute, like that's not necessarily true, that there are people in the painting industry that are very successful and very talented, and not just hardworking, because I would have said that, and you know, but profitable and financially successful and like very good business owners and operators, at a high level. Um, and so I think like that really opened my eyes, and then to like kind of narrow that down into like, okay, so if it's possible to run a $5 or $10 million a year business and have, a lot of employees and sales team and all these different things, it's like, okay, cool. So how do I break that down? And, what is, if it's possible to do that, it's probably possible to sell a job for more than, I don't know, $50 an hour or $60 an hour. And, realizing like helping to understand like one like just what is like what is normal, what's the average, but then also realizing like okay, so then what is excellent.
Mhm.
And I've always been pretty competitive, especially like internally competitive, that if I know like what could be done, I feel like I want to see if I can do it. If I put in enough hard work and I study enough and I whatever it might take, let's see if I'm capable of that. Um, and until that point, I think my answer would have been like $1 million would have been like, oh man, that's like the biggest business or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And then it's like, the film comes off your eyes or whatever, and you realize like, no, like there's actually a lot more possibility there.
Totally. I remember one of the first conversations I had with one of the coaches at the Nolan Consulting Group was them asking me what my goal was. And
Mm.
I think at the time, our business did 250,000 of revenue. And so um, I said 1 million. I'm like, oh yeah, if it was 1 million, oh my goodness, that's so big. And his response was, yeah, interesting, but that's kind of when the fun starts. And I think thinking back to that, like he was absolutely right. Um, and it's hard to see that. I think when and by human nature, this is just very typical. We look at what we have, we multiply it by three, and then we
Mm.
say, wow, that would be a lot. That
Mm.
comes down to salaries, that comes down to home values, that
Mhm.
comes almost universally across the board. And so even today, if you were to ask me, what would be a big painting company? I'd probably just triple our value and be like, here's what big means now.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of echo your story a little bit. I remember um, I was very, uh, my ego was very hurt about being in the painting industry. I remember,
There
I
you go.
remember this. It was like I got into this for random reasons, um, because I needed essentially to start a business in 3 days from the time that I came up with this idea. So I had no better ideas. I didn't know what I was getting into. Like very atypical story, right? Either usually you're a student painter or it's in the family. For me, I was like doing weird things for a 20-year-old. Anyways, the I remember having this mentality of like, the painting contracting world sucks. I don't want to be a part of it. I have a finance degree. All my friends are, investment bankers or working in corporate finance, and I felt very inferior. And it wasn't until I talked to his name, I believe his name is Mike Cresswood. I think he's part of the PCA. And Mike, I met him at a conference, and he said, "How's things going? How's your business?" I said, "Well, you know, we're we're I don't like it. I don't like this industry. I don't like being a part of it, and I kind of want out." He's like, "Well, give me the facts. Give me the facts of your business." I said, "Well, we're 1.5 million in revenue. We have staff, but I just can't handle going to parties and telling people what I do."
Mm.
Because I was having this moment of like real vulnerability, like,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Huh, Jon, you've got it all wrong. You have it all wrong." And I kind of wish he was there at the start. I mean, this goes back to the original
Mm.
question, which is that he said, here's the secret I found of having a really good life for me, and that's that I get to do my job. I get to run a profitable business because I understand how to do it, and people in my life believe that I'm driving a station wagon, slapping paint on houses, and everyone thinks they're better than me. And
Mm.
the freedom that comes from that is so incredible because behind the scenes, I'm going on like 3 trips to Europe a year. My kids are all in private school. Like all my debts are paid off, and I don't have to live up to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're a doctor or a lawyer, like an investment banker, every single day people have expectations of you, and you go to a party and somebody thinks, oh, like that person is successful, so I want something.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you get to go below the radar. It's amazing. And to this day, I believe that's true. That like we run in a very, very unique industry where if you run these businesses properly
Mm-hmm.
and you're humble and you're very, um, you know, kind of attentive to that, keeping sure that ego is in check,
Mm-hmm.
you can run a really successful business if you know what that means and not have any expectation from anybody. So I think it's great. And I've been able to get over that from that perspective. So had that, had Mike been there from the start, I might have thought very differently instead of trying to escape it like every day. Like literally like, hey, do you have like, if you had a job that was different than painting, I might be like, sure, I'll take that. And now I'm like, I love it. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
great. It's super fun. And
Mm-hmm.
this industry is going somewhere because
Yeah.
of people that are thinking about it differently.
Yeah, that's really good. And like the way he described that is so true. And now,
Mm-hmm.
now especially, kind of maybe being on the other side of that conversation a little bit, I would echo a lot of what he described. I
Totally.
think
Right.
there's so many people that, our kids are friends with or whatever that are, a lot of these jobs like you just described, and they have big fancy houses and they drive expensive fancy cars, and I know that most of the people that have those things have, a ton of debt and they can't really afford them. Not to say that that's true of everyone. And to your point, I'm kind of good with my not all that fancy truck that's 7 years old, and it has, I drive a vehicle that is a completely branded textbook painting vehicle. It looks no different than the vehicles our team drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone 180 degrees on, like, I fully embrace it, to your point, because it comes with like no expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a me problem. That's a you problem. Whoever, is judging that or whatever. And I'm amazingly okay with that now.
I know it's weird, right? So like going back to the start, I wish I could have felt comfortable with this, knowing that
Mhm.
this is a really, valuable industry and we do a lot of good work. And
Mhm.
when you're changing aesthetics for people, it actually really, um, can change the way their life works. Like color is very important.
Mhm.
We provide very valuable services. And so it's important to remind
Yeah.
myself with that I mean, I don't have to anymore. I feel like it's ingrained in me now, but
Mhm.
at the time I struggled through that at the start. And
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
but let's talk about kind of this like idea of good versus great.
Mhm.
Um, when you started, what do you think was good or
In
great?
what way are you asking? Like the size of a business, or
Yeah, I
more
mean, you'd said a
specific?
million, but like, did you did you feel like now, if you could go back and give the playbook, what does the playbook look like?
Yeah, I would have said even from the very beginning. I was blessed with the idea that so my dad had a marketing agency when I was growing up. Took me to a lot of like professional speakers like Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins and people like that when I was like in high school. So I was reading Robert Kiyosaki and E Myth in high school and college. And so I was
Wow, that
exposed.
you must
Yeah,
have been so cool.
it's so cool. You're jealous. And I was exposed to a lot of these like important ideas. And so I would have said, even early on, I would have said, my goal is to run a business that doesn't rely on me. Right from the beginning, I never started as a painter. I don't like pretend to be a great, technical painter. I think I can paint pretty well. Part of it is because I care a lot to do good work. And I think that is a big part of most professions. Um, but anyways, I would have said that what good looks like is a business that doesn't necessarily rely on me, um, especially for like the getting the painting work done part of it. That I'm going to be, you know, working in the business in the capacity of probably marketing and sales and administration and back office. Um, but and that like was just kind of acceptable, I guess. And not probably realizing like, wait a minute, you could actually build out a whole sales team and a whole office team and you know all of these different things. I probably would not have thought that, but I think at the very beginning I would have thought, okay, like you know, I'm going to hire like really good people to run the operations side at least.
And it sounds like it took a while to kind of get that in place or to understand it fully. You had the concept, but how long did it take you to actually get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, so we had a different business model when the whole thing first started for the first like 10 or 11 years and whatever. We don't need to bore anyone with the details of that right now, but it's like, so, somewhat like the timelines are a little weird, but it's certainly, even if we go to like when we made a complete pivot to this new business model, like 2017, 18, it took a few years, mostly because, you know, we didn't really look to inside the industry to hire. And so a lot of it was like learning from others in the industry outside of our market and then hiring people from outside the industry to try to like train on some of these best practices.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I would say it took at least a few years to, you know, get a team built to some extent, if you will. Yeah.
Hmm.
Still building.
Still building,
Still a work in
yeah.
progress.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, do you think you could have delivered the concept of what you have now to yourself 20 years ago, 15 years ago? Like, would that have been possible?
I don't think I would have been able to envision an org chart like I can envision one now,
Mm,
in like the size and like the depth of that. Mostly because like the numbers wouldn't have made sense,
mm,
right? If you're going to run like $1 million business, you're going to be able to afford a few non-revenue producing people, call it overhead, call it management, call it whatever, people that aren't painting essentially. And so it's like, okay, if you can only have like two of them, where are you going to put them? And my answers were somebody in charge of the painters and somebody to like answer the phone. And that probably would have been the extent of like, an office manager, the term for person who kind of does everything in the office, and somebody running around checking on the painters.
Right.
Those are some good job descriptions there.
Great job descriptions. I hope you still write them out that way.
That's right. Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So it takes some time to kind of expand your thinking and your mentality about it. But I think to somebody who say if someone's tuning in who's just starting, right? Like they're just getting into this business. I think the words you use, like org chart, thinking about what your company looks like when you grow, is kind of the big things. And I wasn't really of that mentality. I was just like, the more work I get, I'll figure it out. And so the planning for me was, I didn't realize how much you could plan of this business. And what great companies do is they plan quite far in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding that you can plan for growth and build in things for growth is, I think, important to building that great company that we talked about. But overall, like, it's just that great companies exist. You can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
There's methods. Do your research. I mean, the Nolan Consulting Group, we mentioned that. Definitely check that out if that's something of interest. There's education available that can get you there faster. And I think I probably, leading into the next point, I wish I would have paid for education a whole lot sooner. Right? Like, maybe even day one. I think my journey was kind of such that I got into the industry. I tried to get out for a couple of years, and I was working in marketing, actually, and I came to an end. The company I was with was going under. It was obvious, and so I flipped a coin. Heads was like going to web development. Tails was going to the painting industry, and it came up tails, and I cussed. Yeah, exactly. I was not happy with how that turned out. And the first thing I did was to search, painting company consultant. I knew that I couldn't do it in the way that I'd done it before without somebody to give me knowledge, like that critical knowledge. And so I would suggest, if you're at that point, get the education, pay for it, because it comes back to you tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say this, not every coach is created equal. So make sure you do your research on what you need. And, there's going to be value equations there for everybody of how much you pay to the result. But, look into it. I don't know. Any comments there?
Agree that not every coach is good. I'll just leave it at that. So I think it's interesting, though, the way that I came across that, Nolan, is an interesting, I never realized something like that was even an option. Like you said, you Googled, painting company consultant or whatever. In my mind, it was like, I never thought that there was a such thing as successful painting company owners. I thought there was franchises, right? So I would have said CertaPro or whatever, as like, that's, there's that option. And then there's like the chuck in the truck, if you will, local painting company, very unsophisticated, no technology, again, just very blue collar, hardworking, nothing wrong with it, but just not the most professional business. That would have been how I would have described like the only options. You're either CertaPro or like small, tiny, local contractor. And so like the idea that there was a such thing as the Summit Group never crossed my mind. And I only ever heard of it because I was trying to solve a marketing problem. And so I had searched for like marketing companies for painters or something like that. And was on a call with somebody, like a sales call, just learning about them. And he asked if I heard about it from the Summit Group. And I said, no, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. What is that? And he explained to me what it was. And again, it was just like this moment of light beaming down on me, like, oh, there's something out there. And immediately, it was a month later or something, I was, you know, giving them money and asking for help.
Right. Right.
And yeah, I mean, thank God that I did. It was certainly a good thing. And, we met years ago through that. And,
Hmm.
but yeah, again, I think that like goes to the idea that like it, it really helped to shape my mind on like what was even possible.
Totally.
Like you could
And I,
afford to pay somebody to help you with this stuff.
right. Right.
Right.
And that they had information that's valuable to you. Like, I remember thinking to myself, like, man, if I could just write a job ad to hire a painter,
Mm-hmm.
that would be sweet. And then to find out that people have done this before, like, that's amazing. Um, I will also put a plug in here for the PCA too,
Mm-hmm.
that there is a lot of good information and a lot of good people um,
Mm-hmm.
that are a part of that network.
Yeah.
I think in addition to education, I wish I knew that there was a network of people that were willing to
Mm-hmm.
share information.
Mm-hmm.
I remember trying to price a deck a long time ago, and you know what I did? I called companies in other areas pretending I wanted a quote. Hey, I needed a quote on this. Can I send you a picture?
Mm-hmm.
And I would get this picture back, and the guy would be like, "Well, it's between 1,000 and 20,000." I'm like, "Sweet, I got some info."
We're getting closer.
We're getting closer. All right, it's at least not more than 20. Um, and so, in addition to education, like having that network effect of, building contacts outside of your competitive area, or even, I know there's a lot of existing groups that are for competitors to
Mm-hmm.
make each other better, and I think these are great. I wish that I felt more comfortable. I was kind of shy, I think, to get
Mm-hmm.
involved in that kind of stuff. So I try to like, yeah, do my phone calls and get someone on the line who could help me. But I would highly suggest to my myself 15 years ago, find a coach, build a network, make some friends,
Mm-hmm.
have discussions. Like these things are so valuable. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I
anyways,
mean, yeah. Right. I mean, even like PCA, right? I mean, we've certainly were able to, I would say, grow a friendship just from getting together at PCA Expo a few
mm-hmm.
times in a row and, a handful of years ago. And um, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And that, there's the Facebook groups. I mean, there's a lot of different resources that I think are better today than they were. I mean, Facebook groups certainly didn't exist, whatever, 15 years ago. But,
Mm-hmm.
even like the PCA has improved a ton since then. And, now there's the Paint Ed website or whatever that they put out with a bunch of really good content. And I think there are a lot more resources and, other coaching organizations that are good. Um, so, yeah, I think there are a lot of opportunities for somebody in that similar situation today than maybe there were when we were first starting.
Totally.
Yeah.
Um, let's move on to the thing that actually was the biggest problem for me, and kind of spurred on so much of um, my interest level in pricing.
Mm.
Ultimately, PaintScout was driven by this need to price jobs, and it really started with um, when I started, I had no idea how to price. I wish I could go back to that individual, John, 2018, and be like, man, here is how to understand how to make your price. Did you know your pricing from the start, Michael? How did that work for you guys?
So I would say like the one thing that we learned pretty well at the company I worked at in college, which was called Student Painters, was production rate estimating.
Hmm.
And I think I've talked about it maybe a little bit before, but it was like, it wasn't sophisticated. I mean, it was literally like count the number of steps you took and multiply it by 3 to figure out the width of the house. But to be honest with you, it gets the job done. I mean, we now
Yeah.
use measuring wheels, and it's like we're not, again, I make the joke, we're not cutting wood. We're close enough. Got it. Um, and then we had a laminated sheet that said, every window should take an hour. I don't remember what the original production rates were. The standard to paint like 4-inch lap siding, wood lap siding was 85 square feet an hour. That is like memorized. It's in there, isn't it? Right? And forever and a day, that's just what it is. And we've certainly adjusted a lot of the standards over the years, but So I will say that we learned that. The one thing though I knew how to production rate estimate. I did not know how to price because those are two different things.
Hmm.
And then so I could probably have a good idea of like how long something should take. Had no idea how to maybe get it done in that amount of time, but also how to like charge accordingly. I remember funny little story or whatever, but I remember my first year. I was a freshman in college, so I just finished my freshman year, and out, literally going door to door, asking people if they want to get their house painted by little old 18-year-old Michael. I don't know why anybody would have said yes to that, but they did.
You must have been cheap.
Hey, so yeah, preview of coming attractions. Don't ruin the story here. And so, in my mind, as a college freshman, I mean, what, $200 was just a million. And so, I never once booked a job that was more than $3,000.
Hmm.
And I remember specifically a lot of times if I was close to $3,000, I would lower the price to be under $3,000 for no other reason than no one could spend more than $3,000 on painting a house because that was insane. And we painted like old Victorian houses that needed a bunch of prep work on them for 27, 75 or whatever because it was less than 3,000. Even if the price I calculated said 3,800 or whatever. And I'll answer the question that many are wondering, I'm sure. No, I didn't make any money. I lost money. I worked like 12 to 15 hours every day, knocking on doors, painting houses with my friends. And because I didn't charge enough, didn't make any money.
Hmm.
Don't recommend it.
Yeah, it's funny you tell that story because I think the first year, I was working like doing painting. Same story. Like you just have no perspective of money, right? Which is like it's the craziest thing, right? So the sheet tells you 3,800. You're like, oh, that's too much.
Yeah,
Nobody that owns a Victorian home could afford that.
not possible.
um, and yeah, I remember getting to the end of the year and meeting with my accountant. I was like, so how do we do? How do we do? She was like, well, you managed to lose 3,000. And I was like, on one job? She's like, no, for the whole time. You lost $3,000. So like it was a real sobering experience to be like, oh wow, like I don't know how this works. And every single time I felt on like this uneasiness of like, what am I doing? Like I don't know the price.
I thought you were
Um,
going to say the accountant said, "Hey, good news, you're not going to owe a lot into taxes this year.
she did say that.
You're going to get a refund."
In fact, based on how you're working this, you might actually hit your goal of going bankrupt.
Right.
Uh,
Oh my
good
goodness.
for you.
You
So,
don't qualify for like government assistance.
yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, like I wish that I guess the thing I would tell myself is that there is a method. You need to trust the method, and that the price that you think is enough probably isn't,
Raise it, go
and
up a little bit
go
more.
up a little bit
Something's
more.
going to go wrong.
Something's gonna go wrong, exactly. But
Yeah.
it brings me kind of the next point, which is that like pricing aside, I didn't understand. Like, so you say you knew how to production estimate, but you know how to price. I didn't really know how to sell,
Mm.
and I didn't
Oh, yeah,
understand
for sure.
what a sales process was. Right, like going back, I try to think to myself, I'm like, what was I doing? I probably would walk around the house, itemize it. Someone probably had told me it's like $2 a square foot, so I'm like looking like dazed and confused, being like, I've counted 7 windows and it's $2 a square foot. How do I do this? Uh, okay, well, 400 and then work that back. I get $15 an hour, which is what I would make working somewhere else. That's a lot of hours. I should be able to do that. And then I get to the door and be like, here's your price. Do you want? And I wouldn't even ask, do you want to do it? Or I might email it. I was pretty scared. And so I wish that I was aware of that there is processes to follow when you're doing sales that are good for you and good for the customer. Like it helps people buy products, see if there's a fit.
Mhm.
Some of the ones like the one that I really enjoy is the Sandler system. I think you're familiar with that too, Mike. Like it's just gives me comfort to know that I'm helping people buy,
Mhm.
and our sales teams are helping people buy. Our our heart is in the right place when we're doing the process. We're asking lots of questions and trying to figure it out. Man, that would have been so helpful.
I think one of the things I would expand upon is like now that I've gotten to this point, looking back, and like one of the thoughts that really helped was understanding that it's okay if I don't sell the job.
Mm-hmm.
And if the only way I'm going to sell it is to lower the price to a point of not making money, like I was my first year, then I shouldn't sell the job and I should go do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And like that would be better than having done what I did my first year of losing money and working my butt off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wish I could tell you I learned that after the first year. No, it took like 10
Yeah.
because I'm a slow learner. But eventually,
You're a glutton for punishment. It's
I
different.
am. That's true. I think that's the problem with the people that live up in this northern part of the hemisphere here.
Right.
But I mean, it just like I got to the point where I was like, you know what? Like maybe we're not going to be $1 million business or whatever, and that's okay because I'm going to price a job at a point that makes sense. And like, sure, there's a little bit of wiggle room to provide a small discount, especially if we need to book a job or whatever. Don't get me wrong, but it's like I'm not going to go in because my competitor's price is half of mine. I'm not going to say, oh, well, then their price must be right, so I guess my price should be, half. Like maybe that's what the price is for this work, and that's okay. But then I'm going to opt out and not participate. Um,
Totally.
or more to the point, like I'm going to go find a customer who wants to pay for what we're providing here, and that maybe not everybody is the right customer, and that's
Mm-hmm.
certainly another lesson that I've learned over the years.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that idea of like what is the right customer, and that you want lots of people to say no, essentially, because you want the bad customers to weed themselves out. Um, is so valuable because yeah, going back to that feeling of pressure, like when you, I think, so knowing who the right customer is super important. I want to dig into that, but I think a big part of the problem that the root of the problem is that we didn't have enough leads.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't understand how to
For sure.
market, and so it felt every single time like you got a lead. Like, do you remember getting those calls and being like, "Oh my goodness, I have a lead! Like,
Yeah.
I got
Oh, yeah.
one this week, so I better make sure I make it work."
For sure.
And the pressure of that one lead led to like really bad behavior.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, okay, let me call you like 10 times. I'll try to lower my price. Just work with me.
Hmm.
In reality, you don't know why the person's not working with you because you never asked.
Hmm.
They're just like, it must be price. It must be price.
And
And
well,
so,
and
yeah,
sometimes it is, and it's just they're not the right customer. Again, to finish that right.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, more leads to a happier business,
For
right?
sure.
Like,
Oh yeah. I've said before, I think you can solve almost every problem that, again, it's not that simple, but almost every problem that a painting company has in terms of growing and making profit by just having max leads and max applicants for painters,
mhm,
right? Because then now all of a sudden you can hold a high standard for your crews, right? You're not putting up with the person who shows up late and doesn't want to work hard because it's okay. We've got 20 really good applicants coming through the door today.
mhm,
Gonna be okay. That's how like the best sports programs operate, right? If you go to whoever the Alabama football team, part of the reason that they're so good, their first stringers are amazing, but their third stringers are really, really good. And there's another kid who's coming in as a freshman next year who's going to be amazing. And it's this constant flow of really talented people that keep pushing up, the standard of what's going to be acceptable here.
mhm.
And we can do the same thing in our painting companies by having constant flow of really good applicants for painters. Similarly to your point on the leads, if we have, you know, constant flow of leads coming in, I feel pretty comfortable to say to a customer, this is my price. I would love to work with you. I would love to earn your business, but I'm okay if not, because we're not going to starve because I'm going to, in the next few days, I'm confident I'm going to find some customers who do want to pay for what we're doing.
Right.
Agree 100%.
So both of those things are, in my mind, marketing.
Yeah.
Um, kind of they're fairly equivalent in the approach and how we do it at the core. Now, going back to Michael in 2006, what's the advice or what are you going to tell that person in order to get these things going, in order to tackle this problem?
Um, to the problem of more applicants and more leads.
Yeah, like marketing.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
I didn't understand marketing when I started.
yeah, I would say, I mean, one is don't overcomplicate it, and you can just get out there and work hard, and that will solve a lot of the like first problems. Like you can get to a million through just work harder, network, go out and meet with people, join some BNI groups or community organization groups or things like that, and you can get to that million. Go door to door. Like it doesn't matter. The thing that you're doing matters less at that point because it's less about being efficient as it is about just doing enough activity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and similarly with like recruiting, it is somewhat similar at that level because you don't need to hire whatever 40 employees a year. You need to hire a few, and so you can just ask all the things, right? Like ask for referrals, constantly letting people know that you're hiring, posting on the online job boards, like any of those things work. It's just a matter of do it more is what I would have told myself then.
Right. And there's a lot of free advertising available, but you got to do more of it, right? Like just network, be present. One thing that really helped me, and I don't talk about this probably nearly enough, but it's the concept of small market domination. And
Mm.
I learned this a long time ago, and I was struggling with this exact problem for our painting business. And I used to think that the whole city was my customer,
Mm. That's
that
yeah.
every person was my customer. And I quickly, well, for one, didn't have the budget for anything. And so when you don't have the budget for things, what's the best way to use your budget? Because we know that customers have to see your brand, what is it, 7 times to build trust or be willing to
Mm-hmm.
work with you. And so I learned about the strategy that was just to go after a very small number of people at a very high frequency level.
Mm.
And what I did is I started on very specific communities. Even I'd pare it down to even smaller sections, like a postal code or a zip code. And I
Mm-hmm.
would just try to work that one area. That was going to be my area.
Mm-hmm.
And I would make sure that I didn't care about anybody else. If stuff came in, great. But that person was going to see my postcard. They were going to see our signs. They were going to see our trucks. They were going to see everything about us over a period of 3 months, whereby we started to notice that we got lots of work in the community because
Mm-hmm.
they trusted us and their neighbors trusted us. And so I wish I would have started that process earlier, because what we did was we took that and we moved it to multiple different areas,
Mm-hmm.
and we still follow a very similar strategy, to be honest. Um, it's just gotten much bigger, right? So
I think that's gold. I think that's something that I would probably say we're still not great at, but I agree with you 100% that it certainly is a lot easier. And I would also say too, like it's shocking how much painting work is done in like whatever 300 home neighborhood
mhm.
in a given year. It's like kind of mind blowing how much painting work is done in something as small as just like a couple mile radius in one zip code or one city or whatever.
Yeah,
You don't have to, you know, have a hour drive territory to do $1 million in painting work,
not at
or,
all.
or 5 million to be honest. Right? Exactly.
No, no, not at all. Um, yeah, and I think that changing your perspective on that really helps
Mm-hmm.
when you're small. Understand you can actually be big in an area, right?
Right.
Like, and also the saying, like, um, I learned a long time ago. I don't know who said it, but everything always has to be painted,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, even in my own home, we just painted a wall. I think it was like 3 weeks ago, and my kid has already painted, like, has already put a marker on it. It's already got to be repainted, and it's like, So every single house is like this, right? It's like paint is like millimeters thick. It's not like a huge barrier.
You should
And
have used
so,
like dry erase paint or something so your kid could write on the walls and then you'd have no problems.
where were you a month ago, Mike? Come on, man. I
Well,
need
this
these
is,
tips.
I've gotten better at sales. You can, I mean, that's what I'm here for
Exactly.
now.
So, anyways, that's kind of a fun one that I think, not a fun one, but it's super tangible in marketing to
Mhm.
just go back to absolute basics, realize you can be small and big at the same time, spend your resources really efficiently, spend your time efficiently. It was so much easier when we did that. Let's talk about one more thing here. I
Okay.
guess, yeah, I got one more thing, which is, why do customers buy? I know it's a big question, but it's one that
Mhm.
when I really started, we kind of touched on this. I thought it was price.
Mhm.
I thought that we could win jobs just being by figuring out what the customer would want to pay.
Mhm.
Um, I've since realized that there's a lot more that goes into this. People have a lot more baggage than they're willing to admit,
Mhm.
a lot more trust issues than they're willing to admit. And I wish I knew that. I wish I knew that. But again, I didn't have the perspective. I was like 20 years old. I didn't understand what, you know, adults at that point were going through. So, anyways, any thoughts there? I mean, like,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I would have thought, I wouldn't have even used these words, but in my mind, I thought of what we do as a commodity.
mhm,
And it is simply a very basic transaction. We're going to put paint on the house, the wall, whatever, and you're going to pay as little as you possibly can for it. And there's no other value really being provided. And there is no like one person does it better than the other. Maybe somebody can do it faster, but providing a better experience was not part of my like thought process early on.
mhm,
Not to say that we provided a bad experience. It was meant to be like we were friendly and kind and pleasant and certainly wanted to do right by people. And we wanted people to refer us, but all of those things just kind of seemed like a given. Like that's just what everybody would do. And again, that was a commodity. Like having a pleasant experience was a commodity. And so why would you pay any more for it?
mhm.
And I quickly realized that uh, that's not true. That there's people out there that are in our industry or contracting or a lot of industries that will take your money and not provide you with a good experience, or maybe just take your money and not provide you with any experience.
Well, you
Um,
got an experience. It just
well,
wasn't about what you paid for.
yeah, you didn't get anything painted.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized that it's like, so if I could understand how to explain that and give somebody that peace of mind, which isn't just as easy as saying it. Unfortunately, you do have to actually be able to back it up. That's a lot better if your past customers are saying it for you.
Mhm.
People are willing to pay more for that. That
Absolutely.
peace of mind.
Yeah. And understanding that, right? Like it's taken, I think, it took me many years to understand what people value.
Mm.
Um, and I think initially, because of these discussions I'd had with people about pricing, I thought it was just like you said, a commodity. It was about finding that price that was acceptable. And in fact, it wasn't even just acceptable to the customer. It was just like what the industry charges. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like always trying to guess at what the industry charges, and the
Mm-hmm.
person would pick me. It was like very little thought about the customer at all. And and now moving to a system, I say a system, like a sales system, sales process, where everything we're trying to do is to figure out value, to figure out fit, and
Mm-hmm.
understand like, hey, we're not the cheapest, nor do I ever want to be,
Mm-hmm.
because if I am, I've done something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to be aware of that. That if you go with cheapest, something is incorrect. And well, maybe not completely. I say that I kind of I jest. It's like there's
Something's not
something.
being, well, something's not being provided. I
Sure.
mean, at the end of the day, right? It's like I could make my price cheaper by not having health insurance and retirement benefits for our employees.
Sure.
That that I like that's expensive. That we could save a lot of money right there,
Yeah.
and or by not having an office staff that will answer the phone when somebody needs help.
Mhm.
Like those things are not mandatory in our industry.
Mhm.
Um, and we believe that they ultimately provide our customer with a better experience as well. They give our employees a better experience. We believe that if we have happy employees, they can give our clients a great experience. That's our whole business philosophy, my business philosophy.
Mhm.
Um, but but not everybody believes that, and that's okay. But again, under like my original mindset is when somebody told me your price is higher than somebody else's, I was like, oh my gosh, I screwed up. I did something wrong.
Totally.
I'm a failure. I did the math wrong. I did the arithmetic. My calculator made a mistake.
Wait, they're
Well,
over
this is
3,000. This is impossible.
impossible. And now I've now realized that it's like, yeah, my price is higher and their price is lower. And let's figure out why. Like, what is missing from their price that's included in my price? And
Mhm.
it's not to say that my price is better, but nor does it mean their price is better. I always, I think that is such a like concrete way of saying it.
Mhm.
I thought lower price equals better. And now I realize that that is, if not true, it's the opposite of true for
Mhm.
many people.
Right.
And my job as a sales professional is helping them to understand that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, price is an indicator, but it's nothing more than that, right? Like, um, so yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think there's a lot of learning that's come over the years, and I mean, I love chatting with people about this who are starting out. There's a lot of experience that you have to have kind of to get here, but I
Mhm.
think that you can shorten some of these things by having um, some of the stuff we talked about earlier, as well as just like the mentality that the information's out there
Yeah.
and go looking for it. So, anyways, that's
Yeah.
my last thought. You have a last thought there at all?
Yeah. I mean, it's just dream big. I mean, what's possible in this industry is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Once I allowed myself to dream big and opened up my eyes to what was possible, it's way bigger than what I'm doing. It's bigger than you're doing.
Hmm.
Someday I'm going to be as big as you, and someday we're both going to be a lot, as big as a lot of the companies that we look up to.
Hmm.
And it's incredible what what this industry can do, and when it's done well, it's not just great for the business owner, but it's great for the employees, it's great for the communities, it's great for the customers. And there's a lot of people running really good businesses that are taking care of all of those stakeholders, if you will. And yeah, I would encourage, again, we said before, is like get involved and you know ask for help. And so many people in our industry are willing and able to provide a lot of wisdom and experience. Yeah.
Totally.
Cool.
Cool. Let's end it there. If anybody has any comments, send us an email, leave some comments, follow along with us if you feel like we're chatting about, and have a great day and talk to you soon.